Game 5, Eastern Conference Semifinals. The Pacers have everything to fight for. Their path is simple. Down 3 games to 1 in a must-win
check it out.
situation.
You can make picks right here on
bring
Underdog.
tenacity,
Pick higher or
the
lower on
heart,
your favorite
and
players.
an absolute will to win as they face elimination against the Celtics. The NBA playoffs continue. Coming right up.
Let's boot up Madden NFL 24, the only NFL video game. You see clips of Madden in-game footage with some licensed songs instrumental playing. The main menu continues playing mid-hip-hop and shows some more Madden footage, while a player just stands there for some reason. He's just standing there. Does this menu get anyone excited? Probably not. We can fix this really quickly. EA has the exclusive NFL license, meaning they not only have access to NFL Films music, but also literally NFL films. Replace the ugly Madden footage with real football clips. Let's see Barry Sanders make a guy miss, then cut to CJ Stroud throwing a deep bomb to Nico Collins, then cut to Lawrence Taylor wrecking an offensive line, then show Peyton Manning throwing a deep bomb to Marvin Harrison, then show Sauce Gardner making a run on the ball, all with iconic NFL Films music in the background, with the Madden 24 logo at the top or whatever. Then when you enter the game, let's see more real NFL footage of fans at stadiums, players making iconic plays throughout history, and tie it together with highlights of the younger, brightest stars of the current NFL. That type of main menu would get me hyped to play. Most of us play Madden to experience NFL football and its history. Make us forget we are playing a video game. Sports games today feel more like a corporate product than a form of art, and it sucks. Imagine what someone like Ed or Steve Sable would be doing with today's technology. Now let's start a game in that. You get this super generic intro, the same commentary we've had since 2016, an ugly scoreboard sitting at the top of the screen, despite the fact that every single current NFL scoreboard sits at the bottom, and there's basically no effort to make the game feel authentic or similar to a real NFL broadcast. Now close your eyes. Imagine hearing the Sunday Night Football theme song as players run onto the field and warm up, with Mike Tirico and Chris Collinsworth in the booth, previewing the game, then cut to the sideline reporter for injury news, then add the NBC scoreboard and presentation elements. Imagine each player saying their name in college when announcing lineups. Imagine stat overlays showing historic comparisons, statistical milestones, player matchups, discussing the weather and more, creating a narrative for each match. Imagine how much more legit and important each game would feel. Games like Madden 25 did try a lot harder to accomplish this, even if they were still far off. But what we have today is a travesty. Modern sports games are dull and lifeless, and the number one reason why is the lack of authentic presentation, at least in my opinion. With the budget and licenses these studios have, it's unacceptable. In this video, I'm going to show some of the best examples of sports video games with presentation that's actually good, as well as suggest some of my own ideas for how to improve it. Madden is a great example of what not to do. I missed when sports video games had a charming appeal. Today, they just feel like a dry, soulless corporate entity. Notice this main menu screen on Madden 06. You get real NFL footage and images of players based on the team you selected as your favorite. It's an improvement over what we have today, even if it's really old and quite basic. The in-game presentation is decent too. Notice the original EA Sports NFL theme song. We're up against the Bengals. Let's go to midfield to the point guard. Madden 24 doesn't have any theme song. It just uses instrumentals from the soundtrack to cut costs, none of which sounds anything like that old NFL Films music Madden used to have. The old scoreboard in 06 resembles the old Fox scoreboard from that time, and while this game is definitely dated, it still feels more authentic than modern Madden, which is why I brought it up. Madden 25 had some epic intros for teams, and also had physically rendered versions of the CBS crew, and some solid replicas of the CBS broadcast package without even needing the CBS license. This game wasn't the best for presentation, but again, it's an example of Madden trying harder in the past.
Second shot opportunity.
Here's a game from 2009, also made by EA, and it blows my mind how far ahead of its time it was. EA was also making NBA Live, Madden, NCAA football, NHL, FIFA, and more with their sports department. With EA Sports making less games today, the lack of resources excuse doesn't really add up. In this 2009 game, EA licensed both CBS and ESPN, with 2 completely different broadcast packages and commentary teams. Hearing the CBS music and then the ESPN music really makes the game feel more immersive. I don't understand why we don't see presentation like this today, despite being 2 console generations further along. If anything, it should be even better today. Regular viewers of my channel have seen this game 100 times, but ESPN NFL 2K5's presentation still hasn't been matched. Between the ESPN licensing within the game and the SportsCenter weekly wrap-up show in franchise mode showing you highlights of games you didn't even play, or an NFL draft recap, or a combine update, or a free agency update, or injury updates, 2K5 is still the king of presentation in an NFL game. Check out my retrospective on 2K5 if this sounds new to you. NHL 15 is a more recent EA Sports game that uses the NBC license to create very authentic feeling presentation within the virtual broadcast. They even use real footage of the announcers. Madden 24 would benefit greatly from something even as simple as this.
Game's always right around the corner. And so it's Indiana with it. Following the missed shot by De'Aaron Fox. And yes, it's good.
And using that body to his advantage. Matherin will only control.
Even Madden NFL 97 had more passionate presentation. These older titles always had exciting and hype intros that might feel aged today, but they got you in the mood to experience NFL football back then. Today, there's just nothing exciting about starting up Madden, and that's the problem. So whatever happened to, if it's in the game, it's in the game. Out of every modern sports title, Madden is easily the worst offender when it comes to presentation, which is a shame considering it's the exclusive and only simulation NFL game allowed to exist. It seems to me that Madden is avoiding adding to presentation to streamline online games. The huddle is gone, the hurry-up sequence is done off-screen, stat overlays barely exist, and replays are only shown during play selection. The game went from an NFL simulation to a competitive online game, despite retaining the exclusive simulation NFL license. And it makes me sad. It's not like another company can come and create a more sim-focused title. And this has actually divided Madden's community amongst those who enjoy Ultimate Team and prefer Madden as an online competitive game, and those itching for a true NFL simulation game. Both sides should be able to get what they want in an ideal world, but we have to deal with this licensing issue. If Ultimate Team matches need to be streamlined, so be it. But let's put some care into the presentation of Play Now or Franchise Mode or even Career Mode matches. Madden doesn't have good gameplay, but I could overlook that more easily if the rest of the game had that authenticity and excitement it's sorely missing. How would I improve the presentation? In an ideal world, I'd go with the NCAA Basketball 10 method and have at least 2 networks. For EA, I feel like ESPN and NBC would make the most sense. You get ESPN, a brand EA has had the license for over a decade, and while that may have recently expired, ESPN presentation is rumored to be in the new upcoming EA college football game, so I think it's likely that EA has that license again. Monday Night Football, with ESPN graphics, Joe Buck and Aikman doing commentary, the iconic theme song, bum 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 bum, you guys know what I'm talking about, and access to SportsCenter for a weekly wrap-up, perhaps with Scott Van Pelt taking over what Chris Berman once did in 2K5, that would be amazing. Then other games would have the NBC broadcast for Sunday Night Football, for example, from the theme song to Mike Tirico, Chris Collinsworth to the scoreboard and graphics. EA has a history with NBC as well from the NHL games. They could also do Thursday night on Amazon Prime with Al Michaels and Kirk Herbstreit instead, since EA and Amazon also have an existing partnership. If EA really wanted to go hard, they could also get the Fox or CBS license as well for 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. games in franchise mode or Play Now, leaving Sunday Night Football and Monday Night Football for those 2 games per week. This is a lot to ask, but in a fantasy world, this would just be amazing, and I feel like in 2024, the technology is definitely there for this to happen. A cheaper method here would be reusing the EA Sports branding and having Brandon Godden and Charles Davis do the traditional game. Although I think the EA Sports presentation needs a unique theme song and a redesign of the broadcast package at least, to resemble something like Fox or CBS and feel more authentic. The commentary honestly would be fine if we had alternative options thrown in like I mentioned before. I have no issue with Brandon Godden or Charles Davis themselves, but I am sick of hearing only them for now 9 years in a row. I also think AI could be used to create more organic commentary, but I'm not sure if the technology is there yet. It does seem close as I've played around with 11 labs to mimic voices, but it can still sound pretty unnatural at times. I think this is where AI could really help sports teams in the future. Now, imagine NFL Red Zone integration with Scott Hansen, perhaps a segment within franchise mode each week, or even after the season, showing videos of the top plays of the year. Something similar to the extra point from Madden 10. If 2K5 could find a way to do it, back in 2004 on the PS2, and older Maddens had something similar, I'm sure modern-day Madden could do it as well. Fantasy football integration is an idea I've always thought about. With weekly rankings of the highest fantasy football scorers, imagine being able to join a fake fantasy league within franchise mode, either with other players in the connected franchise or if you're playing solo with CPU control team to auto-draft, and having a mini fantasy football game built into franchise mode with your league stats determining points. You'd be able to control a player who could be on your fantasy team, or you could be going against someone on your team, creating some awkward tension. This idea sounds like so much fun to me, and I feel like it's not unreasonable considering how many minigames are found inside of modern AAA releases that aren't sports games. Partnering with Pro Football Focus could be cool as well. While players in Madden have ratings, those are more about the potential a player has. I can throw 50 interceptions with a 99 overall quarterback if I feel like it. A Pro Football Focus section giving every player a score based on performance and not talent would be a really cool addition, especially if the scores were used throughout games to show a player's recent performance. Something else to add to the stat line. FTN Sports, formerly known as Football Outsiders, could also be an option here, with the DVOA stat replacing the PFF score, for example. Advanced stats are awesome. It seemed like Madden was trying to implement next-gen stats into their games a few years ago, but it didn't really display anything useful, and they already removed it from the game, rather than attempting to improve. There also needs to be an overhaul to stats itself. We should have playoff stats tracked and available to view over the years in franchises. Offensive linemen should have more stats than just sacks given up, and this is where PFF could shine. And there are other glaring omissions, like the lack of a target stat for receivers. EA really needs to put some effort into stat tracking, and it would help the presentation of the game overall. The main menu, like I mentioned before, needs an overhaul. Let's see some real NFL footage. Let's hear some classic Sam Spence NFL film bangers to set the tone. Within every menu, I should be reminded that I am inside a portal to the world of NFL history, with cool history trivia and clips and loading screens and whatnot. The current method of making loading screens ads for Ultimate Team really cheapens the game. It also makes me never want to touch Ultimate Team out of spite. Historic teams in some modes like Madden Moments, you can relive history would be incredible. Imagine a grainy black and white broadcast filter when playing with Jim Brown, for example, or reliving the 1990s with accurate equipment state.
And a lot of contact on that one, so he'll shoot two here. It goes on Jason Tatum.
And the insane athleticism of Siakam excels at probing inside and making the D get aggressive.
Reliving the 1990s with accurate equipment, stadiums, and more. NBA 2K has done this with its My Eras feature in their franchise mode, and I would love to see something similar in an NFL game. Now for on-the-field presentation. When taking a knee with time remaining and the other team out of timeouts, end the game and have players run across the field, coaches shake hands, etc., rather than the current method of awkwardly standing there and just waiting for time to expire. Players should have more animations for trying to pin a punt inside the 10, for example, and they should actually get injured properly as well. Usually, I'll see a guy bend over, then run off the field holding his arm, only for him to have a hyperextended knee. It makes no sense and feels completely random. We should have replays of injuries, and players should actually be reacting properly. All Pro Football 2K8 did this in 2007. Players should celebrate more realistically too. In Madden 24, I can score a touchdown while down 20 points in the fourth. My players should be pissed and just hand the ball to the ref, but instead they force me to make them gritty or do some insane celebration while down. It's just awkward. There should be a handball to ref option for people who don't want to see Daniel Jones gritty after cutting the lead to a 28-point deficit. Bring back the hurry-up sequence, so instead of just seeing the clock expire, I can see my players frantically running to try and get off the snap before time expires. It sucks to lose a game because you threw a deep pass, were caught by the goal line with 15 seconds left, you hold the hurry-up button, and the game just ends. Let me see the players try and run, because I feel like 15 seconds is enough time. If it isn't, oh well. But god damn it, let me see it with my eyes. Also, everything just needs polish all around. When the game cuts to the end of the quarter, as soon as a player is considered down, it awkwardly jars to the score, not letting you see the full ending of the play. It's awkward and ugly. When a player makes a good or bad play, there should be reactions on the sideline. I want to see the head coach scream at my quarterback for making a terrible read and throwing a bad pick. And then I want to see the coach give him some encouragement after he throws a bounce-back touchdown. Wouldn't that add immersion? Then there's the crowd. The crowd is lifeless. Make it loud. Pump it up. Squiggling my play art doesn't make me feel like the crowd is alive. It just makes the game more annoying to play. I wouldn't mind it as much if the crowd actually was screaming during it, though. I want to feel like I'm going deaf when I'm playing a playoff game on the road. But in Madden 24, every game feels like a preseason game. Show stat overlays and replays more often. When I throw a big pass, I really don't know how many yards it was unless I pause the game and go to stats. There should be an on-screen acknowledgement that name of player just caught a however many yards pass. Maybe have a stat overlay comparing it to the longest plays of the season, or that player's career. There should be a lot more stat overlays for things like player milestones, consecutive passes completed, streaks of games without an interception, streaks of games with a sack or interception. Things like that to help create more of a narrative to follow surrounding the game, and to give players more goals to shoot for. If a player I drafted in franchise mode is now on another team, and I face that team, make it a big deal. The announcers should mention it, and it should be reminded with every big play they make, or if they have a quiet game, maybe the original team made the right move. The game should be using franchise mode to tell a story. During the draft in franchise mode, imagine if we had actual NFL draft presentation with commentary from someone like Trey Wingo, or someone reading scouting reports that relate to the prospect, and then comments on the fit with the team they were drafted to. It doesn't even need to be live and for every pick, but more like a podcast or radio show playing in the background during the draft, going over some of the most important picks from the start. I also want to be able to see who was drafted 3 picks ago. There's no way to see that in Madden 24. That's right, you can't just click view draft results and see where everyone was drafted during the draft. There's no way to do that. I don't just care who my team picked. Just like in real life, I watch the full draft rather than just turning it on for my team's pick. The only way to do this in Madden 24 is to go one pick at a time and write them down manually on a piece of paper. Franchise mode should be a way to experience the unexpected storylines that an NFL season creates. I feel like I could go on forever about how Madden could improve their game's presentation, and these are just some starting points. Just to throw ideas out there for the crowd that likes to say, well, what else could EA add to the game? Seems fine to me. Am I the only one who actually cares about this? If you feel as passionately about this as I do, spread the word. Let EA know on social media what we want to see. Let 2K know too, because NBA 2K has become stale in the presentation department as well. It's just better than Madden. Share this video if you think it makes a compelling case. Sure, a lot of players would skip all of this, and most just want gameplay to improve the game. I agree that gameplay is the most important thing, but even with mid-gameplay, I feel like presentation, great presentation, could wrap it all together and create a more immersive package that I would actually want to play. I mean, we play video games as a form of escapism. I play Madden to roleplay as a GM or coach or player. I don't necessarily play it to rank up and compete online with other players as much. I see it more as a tool to experience more of the sport when games are not on TV, or to create alternative history, like the 2023 New York Giants winning it all. Of course, the reason you play Madden or any sports game is subjective, like this entire video. But I felt compelled to create this, because presentation does matter a lot to me, as someone who grew up watching NFL film, and just being immersed in the league itself. And even if this doesn't matter to anyone else, it's my chance. I feel like this video only scratches the surface of the potential of presentation in sports games. And feel free to leave a comment with some of your personal ideas for how the game can improve. Thanks for watching.
Round with it. 5 points in the game. Outside Fox.
EA has a history of creating mediocre sports games. While they usually start out decent, nearly every series they've made has fallen off to some degree at some point in time. But not every series. Starting with Knockout Kings in 1998, EA created arguably their best and most consistent sports franchise, Fight Night. After a few good games released under the Knockout Kings name, EA released Fight Night 2004 in, you guessed it, 2004. And what came after resulted in one of the greatest runs of sports video game history. From Fight Night Round 2 to Fight Night Champion, every title was a success. Fans and critics praised the Fight Night titles, especially the later ones, for their realistic portrayals of boxing. Fight Night Champion, the last game in the series, was a grittier, darker boxing game that truly conveyed the brutality of the sport of boxing. It was an M-rated, story-driven experience that was very impressive for its time, and still is today, featuring near photorealistic graphics and mature topics. For a sports game, not only was it innovative and unique, but it also sold pretty well, and then the series just stopped. Fight Night no longer exists. There's been rumors surrounding a new game, but development has been put on hold. The series, one that sold very well and was received very well, hasn't had a new entry since 2011. Why? And if the series returns, would EA still be capable of producing a high-quality sports game? Because they haven't in nearly a decade. Let's dive into the history of this iconic series, see where it ended, and see where we are today. This is the rise and fall of EA's Fight Night series, an iconic, popular franchise that EA simply stopped making. In 1998, EA released their first boxing game, Knockout Kings. At that point in time, there weren't a lot of boxing video games in general, besides the famous Punch-Out for NES. Knockout Kings was the most realistic and accurate boxing game ever made at that point in time, and it was just EA's first. It wasn't a perfect game, but it set a new standard for realistic AAA boxing. Featuring 3 game modes, Exhibition, Slugfest, and Career, it wasn't anything crazy, but it was a very solid start for the new series. Even in the first Knockout Kings title, you can see the roots of the Fight Night franchise and clues towards what was to come. While the hardcore boxing fan may have been a bit disappointed with the slightly arcade-feeling gameplay and a lack of refinement with the little things such as parrying and power balance, it was still easily the greatest boxing video game ever made at that point in time. This is in reference to the PlayStation 1 version of the game. To surprisingly, the game also released for the Game Boy Color, and this was the only EA boxing game to ever release for a handheld system until Fight Night Round 3 on the PSP. Consider it a rare, retro, early handheld version of Fight Night. It was pretty bare bones, featuring just 10 real-life boxers, but it supported multiplayer over a link cable and included the ability to create a box. It wasn't a great game by any means, but I think it's worth mentioning due to how forgotten it is. Knockout Kings 2000 was next, and it was a solid improvement. The game was ported to Nintendo 64, and it would be the last game in the series on that console. As for the PlayStation version, the graphics received significant improvements, now with boxers having accurate faces and builds. Presentation was improved with new replays during matches. While it wasn't a groundbreaking release, it built upon the first Knockout Kings title's solid foundation. With Knockout Kings 2001, things started to get interesting. Despite the high reception of the first and second title, EA kept pushing the envelope. Keep in mind, there wasn't exactly much of any competition going on in the boxing video game scene. Usually in these videos, I talk about how competition brought the best out of a franchise, and then it fell off once the competition faded. But with Fight Night, this actually wasn't the case. Instead, it seemed like the developers behind these games truly loved boxing and were motivated to create a great video game representation of the sport because it hadn't been done before. These games were made out of passion, not simply to make a profit. While the PlayStation version of 01 was similar to the year before with a few tweaks, this game also released for the PlayStation 2, first for the series, and that's the version you want to play. 2001's roster grew substantially. All of the top-named fighters you'd expect from the time, both male and female, were included, along with historic fighters like the great Muhammad Ali, Butterbean returned from the year before, and man do I love playing with Butterbean, he's a beast. A new game mode was added dubbed Classic Fights, and the career mode received significant upgrades, now allowing you to choose the gym you start your career in, as well as more in-depth decision-making, with you having your choice of trainers and cutmen that impact your boxer's skills in different ways. Gameplay took a step forward, becoming more realistic. Boxers move around the ring quicker and behave in a more realistic manner. The CPU will evade and slip punches that it wouldn't have in the previous version, and you can now hit your opponent from new angles, rather than from the relatively linear gameplay of the first game, where you could only really hit the opposition head-on. The improved mobility of your boxer also allowed for better defense, as you can now bob and weave to duck or avoid hits. While these graphics may not appear impressive today, for its time this game looked amazing. This was one of, if not the, best-looking sports games out at the time. And guess what? Max Kellerman is part of the game's commentary team, all the way back in 2000. And while he's been a boxing commentator for a long time, those who only knew him from First Take might be surprised to hear his voice. Knockout Kings 2002 released not only for the PlayStation 2 again, but also for the original Xbox, unlocking a lot more power to work with. Now that the game was only releasing on the 6th generation of consoles, the developers had the processing power available to create, yet again, the greatest boxing video game ever made. That seemed to be the team's goal every single year. Graphically, the Xbox version of the game blew away the previous year's PS2 version. Player likenesses were vastly improved, and the game took a slightly more arcade approach, although it was still a relatively realistic game. Now your boxer was always facing the opponent, so your movements were made in relation to their position. Controls were revamped, and while they are a bit harder to pick up and play, once you got the hang of them, it unlocked a more complex gameplay experience. However, the game focuses heavily on slugging it out toe-to-toe, rather than using the entire ring to your advantage, which is where the game started to feel a bit less sim-like. It felt more like a button masher than a boxing sim, but it was still a fantastic game. Animations were fast, player movement was fast, giving gameplay an adrenaline-filled vibe. This was a fantastic game for multiplayer, with a tournament mode that would allow you to play with all of your friends, but the game felt lacking in the depth department. This was more of a gameplay and graphical rehaul, resulting in yet another fantastic entry into the series, but the game still felt like it had more to accomplish to reach its ceiling. This would be the last Knockout Kings title for the Xbox or PlayStation 2. There was a Knockout Kings 2003, which was surprisingly a Nintendo GameCube exclusive. Since the Nintendo 64 version of Knockout Kings 2000, Nintendo console owners haven't been able to play newer titles in the series, so EA decided to re-release Knockout Kings 2002 a year later, calling it 2003 just for the GameCube. It was more or less the same game, ported over with a few small additions. And then EA made a massive change, one that would change the boxing video game scene forever.
What things can happen to those of us careless enough to disrespect our ancestors?
Betacone Nourishing Oil to Tone Cleanser protects the skin barrier. It provides up to 24 hours
forever. In 2004, 2 years after the last Knockout Kings title, and 3 years after the base of that game was released, EA returned with a new boxing series. While the Knockout Kings games were the most realistic boxing titles you could find at the time, they still leaned more towards the arcade side in certain areas and could never truly figure out what they wanted to be. In 2003, EA took their Triple Play Baseball series and started over, renaming it to MVP Baseball and taking the world by storm. Seeing how successful that move was, they decided to go the same route with their Knockout Kings series. While it was a successful series, EA set their aim even higher, and released a brand new boxing game with the now iconic name, Fight Night. Fight Night 2004 was leagues above any Knockout Kings title, which was super impressive considering how well received those titles were. The boxing genre was reinvigorated, with 2004 delivering a truly simulation-style boxing game. From the controls to the gameplay to the visuals, this was the definitive boxing video game. Even today, Fight Night 2004 holds up quite well. On the PlayStation 2, online was added for the first time, and for the other versions, Exhibition and Career were the only game modes. While it may sound bare bones, Career mode was actually a huge step forward. You started out with 0 attributes and slowly built your player up in the exact categories of skills you wanted. Between matches, you could train your fighter to increase his skills, and you could also choose your opponents, view your rewards, even buy new equipment with an in-game currency you earned by playing through the game. It also featured 32 licensed boxers covering 6 weight divisions, and the in-game Create a Fighter mode was so customizable, you could realistically create any boxer not featured in the game, such as Mike Tyson. The gameplay in the ring is where Fight Night 2004 stole the show. Now using analog sticks for controls, the game set the stage for all future Fight Night titles. You use the right analog stick to jab, pushing it to the left or right to use that respective hand. For hooks, you move the stick in a quarter circle rotation, and for uppercuts, you rotate the stick halfway. The analog controls allowed for a ton of user input and made the games less of a button masher and more of a skill-based, realistic boxing game, where the same strategies you could see work in real life will work in-game. Linking combos was realistic and a lot of fun, and Fight Night 04 delivered the greatest boxing game ever made at the time, just like Knockout Kings titles had done before it. Only this time, EA had set the bar so much higher. It was a fantastic time to be a fan of boxing. Fight Night was now on the map for nearly everyone. While die-hard boxing fans loved the game, it was also a great way for newcomers to the sport to understand the rules, the boxers, and the mechanics of the sport. The Fight Night titles were pretty popular and helped introduce countless people to boxing. With Fight Night Round 2, the best boxing game ever, got even better. Now facial damage was a focus, further adding to visual realism. The graphics engine was improved to the point where each hit resulted in an individual swelling point. Hitting a guy in the eye will result in it welling up and darkening, for example, exactly where you hit him. One of the few flaws of 04 was the ring physics. You could perform unrealistic rubber band knockouts from the ropes, and this was addressed and fixed in Round 2, with boxers having less ragdoll physics and more of a solid feel as well. Clenching was included for the first time, and you could also now hit while moving, resulting in more freedom during gameplay. Haymaker, a massive part of the Fight Night series, was added, allowing users to charge up a strike for a more powerful hit, giving players the ability to choose their hit count. This was a game changer. Joe Tessitore took over commentating duties from Dick Tigger, resulting in a more TV-like presentation. Career mode took yet another step forward, now with a lot more boxers to choose from, along with a new mode called Hard Hit, where you can play to unlock new stadiums and gear. If you win a title, you can spend the rest of your career defending it from all ranked contenders, or you can choose to fight worse fighters to maintain your record, so you no longer have a choice and receive a challenge to your title. You could really control your own career narrative, which was pretty unique to such an old sport. Fight Night Round 2 received critical acclaim, and to this day, is still considered to be one of the greatest boxing games ever made. Could EA really top it off with Fight Night Round 3? On the 6th generation versions of the game, it was more or less the same as the year before. But Fight Night Round 3 also released for next-gen consoles, the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, for the first time, resulting in another massive evolution for the series. These next-gen consoles gave the developers even more power to work with, which was used heavily to improve the graphics, faces, and more. You could see the fear and emotion on a player's face before a hit. You could see blood spilling, black eyes form in real time, swollen lips, and more. With detail never before seen, these 7th-gen Fight Night titles have some of the greatest graphics of all time, blowing away all other EA Sports titles at the time. The downside to Fight Night Round 3 was that it was a bit overhyped. EA spent a lot of time talking about the possibilities of the game on next gen, and the final game didn't live up to expectations. It was still a great game, arguably the best yet, but fans were promised just a bit more in terms of physics and gameplay. Get in the Ring was a new first-person game mode, changing the depth perception and timing of gameplay. You had to be faster, and it felt like a true boxing simulation. Despite improvements and enhancements all around, the initial hype of the first next-gen Fight Night, along with the high bar EA had set with previous award-winning titles, resulted in a very good game that fell just short of expectations. Career mode unfortunately took a step back, as well as the game's AI, but visually, Fight Night never looked better. The next title, Fight Night Round 4, is arguably the greatest in the series' history. Now exclusively on 7th-gen consoles, the developers spent all their time adding to and refining what they built in Round 3, giving fans what they originally promised, a definitive Fight Night game. EA Canada took over development duties, took some chances, and it paid off. First, Career Mode became Legacy Mode.
And here's McConnell. A tad short, but it's good off the front iron.
And watching that defensive effort right there, you wonder how much they want this game.
Yeah, I got to agree. Their defensive commitment's got to be a lot
Texas
better.
is chasing
Now,
up
here's Tatum.
getting
He's got
nowhere.
6. Good job by Tatum and Coach.
Now Texas is the TurboTax expert, doing it all for you.
You can body him up him, he'll still find a way.
While keeping you in the loop.
Halliburton outside.
So you can keep chasing
Shot from the
this.
top of the key.
Now this is
Rebound
Texas.
Boston.
He's trying to get it
Into a
going,
turbo
but the
test.
shots simply have not been there. Nothing seems to be falling.
Here's Christie. No good on the triple.
To be much deeper, customizable, and more rewarding. In terms of gameplay, Fight Night Round 4 has the best and most realistic pure boxing ever seen in a video game. To this very day, at least in my opinion.
Past the arc.
Punches are very fast. Boxers move around the ring with some of the greatest graphics you'll ever see in any video game, despite the game's age. This was a beautiful work of art. The sound design was phenomenal. The game just didn't have a weak spot. Haymaker was tweaked in a more realistic way, as it was de-emphasized but still present, so you were less inclined to go for huge power punches all the time. What worked well in Fight Night Round 3 remained, such as the hooks, uppercuts, and jabs, but now body punches were assigned to the analog sticks instead of Haymaker. The entire approach you would take in Fight Night Round 3 was changed and would no longer be as successful. There was a return to Fight Night's simulation-style roots, with the most realistic and challenging boxing gameplay of all time. This game was and forever will be a classic. EA followed Round 4 up with Fight Night Champion, an innovative and also really dang good boxing game. While Champion took a slight step back in the gameplay department, with easier AI and more exploitative gameplay, it was still fantastic and much better than Round 3, but Champion's gameplay was just a bit worse than Round 4. That said, Champion offered something never seen before, an M-rated cinematic career mode. If you've played Madden 18 or 19, think of it as similar to the long shot mode in those days, only if it was actually good, mature, and boxing related. The story follows Andre Bishop with a ton of really well-acted cutscenes that create an emotional bond to the character and his story. As you play through the mode, the commentary team talks about Bishop's story, and their lines change based on how you performed over time, creating a lot of realism. You can replay this mode multiple times and have a very different experience. Blood spews more than ever thanks to the M rating, and the story actually takes some dark turns. I don't want to spoil it because it is 100% worth playing through if you've never played the game before. So why do I consider Round 4 to be the better boxing title? As I mentioned before, it was much more challenging. It also ran in 60 FPS while Champion ran in 30 FPS, resulting in smoother gameplay. Footwork and face damage were also better in Round 4. That said, Champion did improve in some gameplay areas, such as the new stamina system, which made it nearly impossible to continuously throw straight punches over and over. Stick controls felt more fluid, and the overall gameplay had a nicer flow to it. But due to its easier gameplay and flaws, I have to give the nod to Round 4. It's definitely subjective though, and I can see the case for either game. Unfortunately, we never got to see another Fight Night game again, but why? Today, EA makes UFC games that have received relatively mediocre reviews at best. It's an MMA game, so it's not really comparable to Fight Night, but it's the closest thing we've had since. Why did EA stop making Fight Night games? The most common theory comes down to finance. EA over time has become a profit-driven company, and paying for the UFC license is much cheaper than having to pay individual boxers to appear in the game. It was rumored that fighters such as Floyd Mayweather were asking for a ton of money to appear in the game, to the point where EA didn't expect to turn a large profit. Many fighters today grew up playing these awesome games, and I'm sure most of them would love to be included in a new title. It's odd, isn't it, that EA developed arguably their greatest and most consistent sports franchise ever, and then just stopped. We may never know why they stopped making Fight Night games, but you could argue that the series ended at a perfect time. EA was still a good company back then, known for their quality sports games, and while some of their games had fallen off already, such as Madden, and NBA Live was about to, they still had numerous thriving sports games, and even their worst games looked better than what their worst games look like today. Unfortunately, EA is no longer the same company. It's ran by different people, executives who care about nothing but profit. The quality of an EA sports title is no longer a priority, nor is it even a focus. And using the UFC games as an example, it might be for the best that EA never tarnished the Fight Night name. It's one of the very few sports franchises that has stood the test of time and was consistently great, ending on a high note. While Fight Night Champion is backwards compatible on Xbox, Round 4 is, which is a bummer, considering the fact that many call it the greatest boxing game ever made. Luckily, it's more accessible today thanks to PS3 emulation. But it's a shame that there aren't any new boxing games to help introduce the younger generation to the sport. And nowadays, with all the YouTuber boxing matches going on, as well as athletes from other sports entering the ring, a modern boxing game could be really popular. In 2021, it was reported that EA was working on a new Fight Night game, codenamed Moneyball, and likely to be titled Fight Night Round 5, but it has since been paused indefinitely so EA could focus on their next UFC title. If it ever did come out, I wouldn't expect it to come close to the older Fight Night game, but who knows, maybe EA could surprise us all. Esports Boxing Club is a new boxing game in development, and while it looks promising, we have no idea what to really expect, but it's worth keeping an eye on at the very least. The end of boxing video games has mostly been a mystery, considering just how great the Fight Night series was. But Fight Night Round 4 holds up so well today that if you pick it up, you'll still be impressed. For a decade-old title, it features some of the best gameplay and graphics ever seen in a sports game, and that's some respectable longevity. Maybe EA will return with a new Fight Night game in a few years, and Esports Boxing Club could be a worthy competitor, pushing EA to return to form. Or, maybe we will see yet another decade of silence in the genre. Regardless, the Fight Night series was incredible, and will go down in gaming history as one of, if not the, best sports video game franchises of all time. Thanks for watching.
Hello, and welcome back to We're Not So Different, podcast for hard-coded idiots. My name is Luke. I'm an amateur historian, and as always, I'm joined by Dr. Eleanor Unoka, who is anything but. Today, we are talking a little bit about the shift from feudalism to capitalism, the 30 Years' War, and more with a very special guest. And in light of this guest, we are once again forgoing our question this week. We'll come back next time. So, over the course of nearly 100 episodes, we've covered a whole lot of topics on the show. Far too many to count, really, but there were a few we do like to revisit quite often, even some that occur outside the medieval era we typically call home. Of course, there's historical materialism. You'll no doubt recall that we spent a long time following the materialist trajectory of history, focusing extensively on the centuries-long transition from the feudal mode to the capitalist one. And then there's the whole Roman Empire, the fairly medieval institution ever to exist. And it kept going like that even after the era ended, in addition to being a constant source of humor in our daily lives. We also did a short series on the HRE recently to track its history into the early modern era. We finished that series with a full episode about the pivotal 30 Years' War, concluding that it's fairly important. Then there's the Protestant Reformation, the end of memorialism across early modern Europe, and the ongoing changes in warfare that all feed into the 30 Years' War. Seeing how we return to those topics so often, we feel that we might have a guest to come on the show and talk about them in a little more depth. And that's why we're happy to welcome Matt Christman. By the way, the introduction, Matt is one of the co-hosts of the highly successful Chapo Trap House podcast, and also hosts the Twitch streams, particularly Matt co-hosts the President's podcast series with Chapo producers Wade, discussing material, power, and circumstances with the President of the United States from 1776 to the present day. So Matt is really here to talk to us today about his and President's successor series, The Fellow Presidents, which is called Fire on Earth, and will be released on the Chapo Patreon feed beginning in January 2023. Eleanor follows possession of the 30 Years' War and how it created the circumstances that allowed capitalism to become the dominant mode of production across the globe. Matt, thank you so much for coming on the show. How the hell are you?
I'm good, thank you for having me.
Great, yeah. So you did a series on the President of the United States, and it was really good. So why go from that to talking about the 30 Years' War? What drew you into that particular context about something else?
Well, it was like Hello Presidents. It was a topic suggested by Chris Ray, our producer at Chapo. We came up when the opportunity came up to do projects, separate from the show. One of the first ideas was like me doing something historical. And Chris suggested, what about presidents? Because I tended to get wound up on the subject of presidents. So it'd be a good framework. So we did the show, and we kind of realized as we were making it that what we were really describing is how capitalism is practiced in the United States, the context of the United States, the settler colonial project that it was, using a capitalist engine that was produced in the fires of 17th century Europe and applying it to this different context, different material reality. And then how it is able to essentially
Over in the corner,
sublimate all of the contradictions of that.
6 on the shot clock.
Land and
good
labor,
as it just
dominated labor, those
right
kind of
down
things.
through the net.
And
he's
how
had
that
better
then, because it
starts,
becomes a
obviously,
stable
but he's
political
shaking
structure,
it off here
is able to
in the
exercise
second.
global power on behalf of this new globalized capitalism. And so, when we got done, Chris said, hey, I was always thinking, what about the 30 years war? Because the subject is, kind of under-discussed and also has a lot of these same things. And at first I was like, oh yeah, I hadn't really thought of it, honestly, as an option. I was just, I'm not really medieval. So I was sort of like, it's a little outside my bailiwick. But once we started talking about it, I was like, oh yeah, this is the next step. We're describing this end, the end of this process. And it makes sense to be able to get even more detailed and a deeper understanding if we look at its beginning. And we realized that the 30 Years' War can stand in for this mid-17th century explosion that rippled across the entire world. I mean, the Qing dynasty, or the Ming dynasty collapses in China at this very time, and there's like 4 coups in the Ottoman Empire at the same period as well. Like throughout every large human civilizational settlement around the world, there's these huge ruptures caused in large part by the Little Ice Age, by this huge climactic change. And so I think the way we want to sort of frame it as to understand how capitalism comes into being out of this mode of production, feudalism that had been extinguished in practice in a lot of ways, but still held political and ideological and cultural hegemony. How does that stalemate break? And I think the way that we describe it, and the way that we visualize it, it's like a toothpaste.
I'll tell you, not many players are better at forcing a defender to foul.
Feudalism that is in terminal crisis, with contradictions accumulated to the point where it can no longer move forward, it's only going to eat itself from within. Everyone is going to try to save it, and by trying to save it, they will destroy it. Like, that is the dynamic that sets in, because they can't. Because the dominant political structure has no interest in changing a feudal mode of relations, even though it doesn't work anymore. So they're not going to change it by themselves. The change has to come from below. But the whole point of below is that it's below. The people there do not wield power in a way that can direct the flow of events and channel things like the technological innovations that exploded during the demographic. And the new liquidity in the economy caused by greater circulation of species. And this is creating the conditions that can deal with things like, a huge drop in productivity of agriculture. That is caused by the Little Ice Age, exacerbating one of soil extinguishment just because of, improving our agricultural practices. This is a thing. This is a new way of doing stuff that could, if it was coordinated into a project that brought together culture, technology,
and the second free throw, good,
and production, then it could adjust in the face of the seemingly existential apocalyptic, and everyone who was alive at the time thought of it in an apocalyptic term, challenge. And they did. They saved the ship. And by docking it in America, they ensured its eventual world domination. But when you see this happen, the pressure of existing contradictions plus the accelerant of climate change, pushing a situation where people in that middle strata are able, due to the liquidity of the situation caused by the explosion of violence we're talking about, the state capacity built by fighting these wars, creates a new structure, a new political structure that can actually effectively address conditions and not just sort of react to them until it annihilates itself, which is what's happening everywhere else. But again, the people at the top will never do this. It goes against their interests. So only those who can find a material interest in doing so are going to actually be motivated to do it. And that is the city people. That is the that is the merchants. It's the burghers. The reason that they're called the bourgeois. And they are able to bring together a bunch of things that emerge spontaneously out of the collapse of feudalism, like the printing press, like television, like double-entry bookkeeping, the joint stock company, fucking star forts, and rifled, whatever. We're able to bring it together and reform, restructure the social order. But of course, in so doing, ceding the very destruction of that order in time, once it can no longer deal with adjusting material conditions, which we are now also facing, and like them, facing a situation with a extinguished, a mode of production that is extinguished usefulness and ability to deal with the world as it is. But a ruling power that is incapable of addressing that for fear of losing their privileged position within it. And that causing, or at least contributing to, a accelerating crisis caused by climate change. The system kicking in, basically, to show that something has to give here, but which a call that cannot be recognized by any ruling elite, which is why the conditions of change are always going to be crisis and often violent and deadly crisis.
Here's
Yeah, so, I mean, I'm just sitting here nodding and going, yeah, fuck yeah, man. The whole time, because, have you ever heard of, there's this sort of graphical concept that we call the general crisis of the 17th century? Yeah, which come up with by Hobsbawm. So, basically, everything that Matt just said is kind of like a rolled up in there, which is basically like, all these pieces are fucking widespread financially, and then it results in kind of like the abuse of money. And the thing that I really like to point out is exactly what you were talking about, which is, over and over again, I constantly tell people, even how much people work in medieval period, people ask me about England all the time, and I'm like, man, I don't care about England, right? Like, England doesn't mean anything, it's like a poor little backwater that's on the edge of society, but that's why you end up seeing England really kind of come storming forward at this time, because they have the most to gain. Right? Yeah. Like, institutions such as, sure, the Holy Roman Empire is kind of like falling apart at this point in time, but, they dig their heels in. They're very, very important, and they've got a lot of land, and they're like, no, fuck, we can't let this go. England's got nothing to lose. Who cares about England, right? And they're like, well, we're tiny, we don't have any land. It's like, come on, everyone, get in the fucking ship. Let's see where we can go, like...
And so he makes both from the line. Pacers leading by 4.